Hello and welcome to today's session on why do mergers and acquisitions happen. I am Dr. Maruf Ahmed Mir, PhD in Financial Markets and MBA in Finance and Accounts from AMU Aligarh. And at present, I am associated with Asian Business School, Noida as Associate Professor in the area of Finance and Accounts. So dear students, merger and acquisition have become the most prominent process in the corporate world. The key factors contributing to the explosion of this innovative form of restructuring is the massive number of advantages it offers to business world. The following are some of the well-known advantages of mergers and acquisitions. Number one, the very first advantage of merger and acquisition is a synergy that offers surplus power that enables enhanced performance and cost efficiency. When two or more companies get together and are supported by each other, the resulting business is sure to gain tremendous profit in terms of financial gains and work performances. Number two benefit. So cost efficiency is another benefit aspect of merger and acquisition. This is because any kind of merger improves the purchasing power as there is more negotiation and bulk orders. Apart from that, staff reduction also helps in great deal in cutting the cost and increasing profit margins of the company. Apart from this, increase in the volume of production results in reduced cost of production per unit that eventually leads to raised economies of scale. Third benefit, with a merger, it is easy to maintain competitive edge because many issues and strategies can be well understood and acquired by combining the resources and talents of two or more companies. Fourth important benefit, a combination of two companies or two businesses certainly enhances and strengthens the business network by improving market reach. This offers new sales opportunities and new areas to explore the possibilities of their businesses. Another important benefit is, with all these benefits, a merger and acquisition deal increases the market power of the company, which in turn limits the severity of the tough market competition. This enables the merged firms to take advantage of high-tech technological advancements against the obsolescence and price wars. Let's understand that why to buy or sell a company. Now on seller's side, the conversation begins with any of the numerous comments like, I think it's time to retire, or I have taken this company so far as I can take it, or maybe even the company is about to crater. I want to get out. On the buyer side, the conversation also begins with any of the numerous comments, but comments of a slightly different variety. Organic growth is not enough. We need to consider growth through acquisitions, or I think buying that product line might be easier and less expensive than building one from scratch, or maybe even. So those guys are killing us. Let's see if we can buy them out. So these conversations are often held in with the advisors, lawyers, accountants, wealth managers, or other executives. Most often a set of questions follow. How do we do this? What is the first step? And finally, do you know anyone who can help us? The decision to sell a business or to make an acquisition is often confusing, frustrating, time consuming and expensive. But never fear. In this episode, I will break down early considerations of selling or buying a company so that they can feel intimidating. Dear students, let's understand common reasons to sell many people, including many business owners. Think the cash flows from a business is the only source of wealth creation. They overlook the quite often stunning wealth that company ownership can create. Now, today we will explore the reasons an owner may want to sell his or her business. Number one, trying to time the market. This is to say, trying to set your transaction to close when the economy is roaring. Rarely works. Instead, trying to guess when buyers are going to pay high price. Sellers should focus on running the businesses, increasing sales, controlling cost and improving profit. The best time to sell a company is at the intersection of a saleability and the need want to sell business and do not necessarily when the market is booming. Next is retirement. Retirement is one of the top reasons business owners decide to sell their business. When an owner is considering moving to the next phase of life, that phase of life often is fueled by the proceeds from selling his business. So the question becomes, how do I know when it is time to retire? Here are some typical issues business owners consider when deciding whether to head off into the sunset. Another issue may be family. Where are the kids? At home, in college, on their own? Are you still supporting them or are they financially independent? Another aspect may be lifestyle. What do you want to do? Get involved with charities, golf, boat, travel, spend time with the grandkids? How much vacation time are you taking each year? If you are spending increasing amount of time away from the business and the business can operate without you, a good thing if you want to sell it, retirement time may be high. Another concern may be finances. Do you have enough saved to fund the lifestyle you want? Have you actually figured out that the number with professional planner or are you just guessing? As far as funding retirement, business owners usually have a rough back of the envelope number in their heads. Many times that number is little more than a guess, and that guess often is a gross overstatement of what the owner really needs to fund his retirement. Sit down with a qualified wealth manager and talk about exactly what you want to do in retirement. That wealth manager should be able to determine what you will need to retire and live exactly as you want to live. Another important aspect may be your personal drive. Be honest. How have your energy and drive? Yeah, I know that sounds like one of those pharmaceutical commercials, but in all seriousness, are you still the go-getter who originally built the business? Admitting that your drive isn't what it was once and that you are putting aside your ego to think about what is best for the business and your employees is no cause for shame. If your position is no longer necessary to support the family, you have enough to retire. Your lifestyle interests are increasingly outside the confines of the work and you have simply lost your mojo and desire for work. Perhaps you are ready to think about selling the business and retiring. Buyer. You can ask a reluctant seller if she has a plan for a retirement with a qualified professional. Some owners choose to sell business because they have determined that they have taken the business as far as they can take it. They may not want to retire, but they also may not want to run the same company anymore. This situation happens for a few reasons. One of the reasons could be the capital needs. A growing company, even a highly profitable company, usually requires more capital than the business generates from the operation and cash flows. Why is that? For most companies, cash flow lags behind revenue recognition, and revenue recognition lags behind expenditures acquired to support that revenue. A growth company that constantly needs to reinvest in the business in terms of new employees, equipment, supplies and so on, essentially has the capital needs for a much larger enterprise. Owners often decide they have no longer willingness to put their money at risk, and as such they are ready for another owner, perhaps a larger and a better capitalized entity, to swoop in and take the company to the next level. Niseg, I'm not talking about those fancy two-wheeled scooters here. The SEG refers to the natural phase during the lifestyle of a company, the gradual shift from an entrepreneurial company to a professional company. As the company grows, it needs more people to manage, oversee, and support the company's new large size. With each new hire, the dynamic of the company changes. The entrepreneur or the owner influence on the corporate culture is diminished. This move isn't a bad thing, it's normal. The company by necessity has to shift from a centralized C of the plant, CEO in the non-every decision organization into a diverse one, centralized one, and a highly structured entity. Many successful entrepreneurs simply don't have the ability or interest to design, implement, and run a highly structured company, and thus begin to pin for the days to yore. At this point, bringing in a large professionally run entity may be the best way for the company to continue its upward growth. Another aspect may be chairman of the board. The major battle are won, the company is on a great footing and everyone knows his job and does it well. So where is the problem? Believe it or not, many business owners, especially those of the entrepreneurial stripe, grow exceedingly bored with a well-run company. In this situation, both the company and the owner may be better off if another, more engaged entity can take over. An owner selling his business so that everyone else can take it to the next level isn't indicating that he cannot run the business. He may be setting his sight on his next business venture. He may be one of the wanted serial entrepreneur who has undoubtedly heard about. The world of merger and acquisition is rife with them, and everyone is better off as a result. Because entrepreneurs create jobs, new products, and better services. How to do planning ahead to ensure that smooth scale? If you are thinking about selling your company, a division or a product line, you can take few steps to make your assets more attractive to potential buyers. Now, we will now discuss some tips so that some areas to look at before you sell or even decide to sell so that you can avoid the common pitfalls. Number one important tip is clean up the balance sheet. One of the biggest obstacles to getting a deal done is messy balance sheet. One of the key figure on the balance sheet is the current ratio or the difference between current assets and current liabilities. Anything labeled current on the balance sheet is essentially the same thing as cash. So what are these cash or almost cash items? Assets, cash, account receivables, inventory, deposits, prepaid expense, liabilities, accounts payables, accrued expenses, meaning those yet not paid, and the current position of any loans, interest, perhaps of some principal. Another aspect is collect your receivables. Make sure that inventory is all saleable. Another aspect is pay off the debt. Another hurdle in selling the company is taking care of your long-term debt. Many sellers either conveniently forget about the debt or assume that buyer will simply assume that that is no question asked. Here is a little bit of expert advice. This is not going to work. The long-term debt of the business is seller's obligation. Another important aspect, a tip is address legal issues. A wise business owner settles any outstanding lawsuits before a sale and is prepared to talk about those lawsuits and their outcomes. Another important tip is trim staff and cut dead wages. If you want to maximize the company's valuation, you need to maximize the company's profit. One way is to reduce and eliminate wasteful expenditure. And because the large expenses of most businesses is personal, you may have to make some difficult decisions. Another tip is that increase the sales. The other side and the happy side of the improved profit coin is higher revenue. The profitability of your company improves when revenue increases and expenses stay the same. It is simple maths, of course, but you cannot follow the road to higher revenue until you push your salespeople and perhaps provide a different, that is more lucrative commission plan. Another important tip is quantify owners' expenses and other add-backs. Most business owners and executives are familiar with the term generally accepted accounting principle, also called as GAAP. Closely held business often utilize a different version. which is called as FAP, FAAP, or Family Accepted Accounting Principles. Owners of closely held businesses often run personal expenses such as car, country, and other club, travel, cell phone expenses, meals, and any other expenses that isn't really a business related expense for the company. If you are one of those owners, talk with your accountant about how best to quantify and present those expenses. Owner, make thyself expendable. Companies with the greatest value to buyers are those companies where ownership is completely, totally, and utterly replaceable. Not surprisingly, that's a spiky pill for many owners to swallow. Heck, the thought of being utterly replaceable is spiky for almost anybody. But ego aside, think of an issue this way. How can you expect to get top dollar for selling your company if the company cannot operate without you? Here are a couple ways to make yourself replaceable as an owner. Train other managers to run the company without you. Empower them to make decisions and trust them to work independently and make their own decisions. Design and implement systems that remove any ad hoc decision making systems. You are not trying to cripple the decision making of others. Instead, you are providing a framework for employees to make decisions so that they can do without constantly running to you. Now, exploring typical reasons to acquire. Since time immemorial, mankind has grown through acquisitions. Granted, those early acquisitions were rarely conquests, but in recent years, empire building has focused on acquiring companies. An acquisition allows a company to skip the growth stage and buy existing sales and profits. For this reason, a company may choose to buy another company instead of relying on organic growth. Make more money, make no mistakes. The pursuit of money is a main reason for making acquisitions. Although it may be the most base and crass for reasons, it is an extremely valid one. Making more money is a noble pursuit. Profits make shareholders happy and therefore keep the vultures from descending upon the highly flying executives. Gain access to new products and new markets. Acquiring a company with a similar product allows the acquirer to increase its share of the market. Being a large buyer in an industry can have a lot of benefits, such as the ability to negotiate better prices or the terms from suppliers and vendors. Increase awareness to customers. Large companies typically are better known than the smaller companies and raise the prices. Buying a company may also allow the acquirer to introduce its product into a new market, as well as introduce the acquired company's products into buyer's market. Another aspect is implement vertical integration. Now, vertical integration means buying a supplier or an end user of your product. An ice cream manufacturer that buys a dairy farm is vertically integrated. The benefit may include better pricing. The ice cream manufacturer does not have to pay the dairy farmer markup and the control of the raw material. The downside in that the acquired company may service other competitors. So, if a dairy farm also supplies other ice cream manufacturers, those competitors may balk at buying from their rival. This situation is a channel conflict. As you thought, that was when you and your spouse argue over what program to watch. Take advantage of economies of scale. You are likely to hear this term countless times. Economies of scale simply means that a company grows larger, the fixed expense stays the same or increases far more slowly than the top line revenue. Therefore, the larger the company becomes, the more profitable it becomes. Another aspect is buy out a competitor. If you cannot beat them, buy them. If company A is killing a company B in the marketplace, company B may determine simply buying company A in the best way to make the competition go away. Now, let's discuss now the problems of mergers and acquisitions. It's a well-known fact that a good number of mergers fail because of various factors, including cultural differences and flawed intentions. Most companies, when sign an agreement, often create a bigger picture of their expectations as they believe is a pure concept of high capital gain. When two are combining, this belief is not always true, as conditions in the market and economy often rule the operations and the functioning of any company. Students, the history of mergers and acquisitions have revealed that almost 2/3 of the mergers taking place experience failure and feel disappointed on their terms and predefined parameters. At times, even the motivation driving the mergers can prove to be intangible. Many factors are contributing to the failure and elements that are problems of merger and acquisitions. Many aspects should be understood and analyzed before signing an agreement, because even one small mistake in making a decision can completely dump both the companies with an irreversible impact. Some of the prominent issues with regards to the failure of merger acquisition are as follows. A flawed intention in terms of unethical motivation or high expectation can eventually lead to a failure of the merger. So, if any company desires high capital gain along with the glory and fame, irrespective of the corporate strategy defined to fulfill the requirements of the company, the merger fails. Any kind of agreement based completely on the optimistic stock market condition can also lead to failure in the stock market. It is an uncertainty entity. In such cases, more risks are involved with the prevailing merger. Cultural difference is also a big problem in the case of a merger. When two companies form a different corporate culture, come together, it becomes challenging task to integrate the culture of both the companies. It is certainly difficult to maintain the difference and move ahead for success without any kind of integration. An important aspect, accounting standard 10, which is accounting for fixed assets. This is a mandatory standard. It does not deal with the specialized aspects of accounting for fixed assets that arise under a comprehensive system reflecting effects of changing prices, but applies to the financial statements prepared on historical basis. Another important thing is accounting standard 26 for intangible assets. AS 26 came into effect in respect of expenditure incurred on intangible items during accounting period, commencing on or before 1st of April 2003, and is mandatory in nature. This standard applies to accounting for intangible assets. Then we have an accounting standard 11, accounting for taxes on income in case of an amalgamation, where the amalgamation is in the nature of purchases and the consideration for the amalgamation is allocated to individual identifiable assets, liabilities on the basis of their value at the date of amalgamation, as permitted in accounting standard 14. The deferred tax asset. It should also be recognized by the transferee enterprise at the time of amalgamation itself, considering these are the identifiable assets so long as it fulfills the requirements of the prudence. This will automatically affect the amount of goodwill capital revenue arising on amalgamation. Another aspect is, Indian accounting standard 103, which is business combination. The Ministry of Commerce has notified this standard as a part of the efforts towards convergence with the International Financing Reporting Standards issued by International Accounting Standard Board, which is commonly called as IASB. So, dear students, this is all about today. Hope you have understood. So, we will meet in the next episode with a new topic. Till then, take care and goodbye.